What happened to villains with genuine backstories and motives? Is real storytelling dead? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. But I'm gonna save it, because I wrote a spin-off for the Doom Syndicate villain. Yo, what is this disgusting random-ass character design? We need to fix that immediately. Thank God, that's so much better. Now, where were we? This is the tale of how an innocent man went from being too kind-hearted to tell even a white lie to wanting to take the lives of billions of people. This is the tale of Gail that will make you look at the Megamind franchise in a whole new way, and possibly turn Megamind 2 from a soulless cash grab to an eye-watering masterpiece. Now, why is this villain really evil? They literally never bother to give us a genuine reason. Like the previous villain, Titan had a pretty good reason, but Gail is just an empty, bland character, like British food level bland. I'll fix that by giving her a genuine backstory and motive. They mentioned that she used to be a weather reporter, but got fired by Roxanne Ritchie.
You got yourself fired because you never got a forecast right. Not to mention turning evil and throwing lightning at everybody, Gail.
Let's build more on that. So the movie starts off by showing Gail being super excited for the interview for his new job as a weatherman. We get a shot of his room as it's filled with a bunch of weather-related things like drawings, math equations, forecasts, etc. and a big poster of Roxanne Ritchie, which will be important later on. He looks in the mirror and rehearses his lines with great enthusiasm, gives the Roxanne Ritchie poster a kiss, and darts out of his house to head for his interview. He arrives to the station and the interview begins. The interview asks, "Why do you want to be a weatherman?" Gail says, "I've always been extremely passionate about weather. Most people don't think much about it, which is surprising because it's the most fascinating thing on the planet. Sometimes it burns and scorches, freezes and snows, blows with might and pours with fright. Entire civilizations flourish or perish because of it. Weather makes the difference between happiness or horror, full bellies or famines, life or death. And I want to dedicate my life to studying it." The interviewer is very impressed and tells Gail, "You're hired." Gail jumps up in excitement with a big smile on his face and yells, "Hooray!" But little does he know, getting hired was the worst thing that could have happened to him. You'll see why later in the story. Gail wakes up the next morning ready for his first day at work. He drinks a bunch of coffee and jumps in his car and arrives at the weather reporting station. He jumps out and enters as everyone kindly greets their new co-worker. He is handed some files and immediately gets to work. He's at a whiteboard drawing stuff and making calculations as to what the weather will be by analyzing the data. He gets exhausted but drinks a coffee and continues working because he wants to make a good impression at his new job. After finally finishing, he circles a number 5% on the whiteboard. Whoa! How did he finish so fast? We're ahead of schedule now, and it's only his first day. Everyone is very impressed with him, and he gets a round of applause. He sheds tears of happiness as they all clap, and he loves his new job he's wanted for so long. He also has a daydream that Roxanne Ritchie is one of the people clapping for him. Now he's rehearsing before it's time to get the broadcast. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, after analyzing the cloud formations and comparing them to previous ones, we have concluded that there is a 5% chance that it will rain tomorrow." Everyone laughs at Gail. He looks confused. A coworker says, "Oh, didn't realize you were serious. Sorry, we forgot you're new here." "What do you mean?" "Forgot to tell you this, but you never say the actual percentage of it raining. You always say it's higher than it actually is, so if it's 5%, you should say it's 20%. "Why on earth would I do that?" He's really clueless. "Because if people expect it to rain but it doesn't, then people won't mind. But if people don't expect it to rain and it does rain and it ruins their picnic, then people are gonna get mad at us and our ratings will drop." "So you want me to lie to everyone because of our ratings? Isn't lying wrong?" "Look, kid, I know this is your first day on the job, but there are rules that we all have to follow, and you're no exception, so be a team player." And by the way, the exact same thing happens in real life. I literally ripped a dialogue from an article from the Washington Post. They really do lie about the percentage of rain for the exact same reason. That gives this rewrite an element of realism and correlation to the real world that the original Megamind did a great job with, and OG Megamind fans love. Gail looks down with a disappointed look on his face, looking at the ground, wondering what to do. He shakes his head, he fidgets with his hand, and finally he says, Okay, fine, I'll do it. I'll say it's 20%. Everyone is glad and pats Gail on the back. Now it's finally time for the broadcast. Gail is nervous, shaking as he walks up on stage. We are live in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, after analyzing the cloud formations and comparing them to previous ones, we have concluded that there is a 5% chance that it will rain tomorrow. The whole crew is disappointed, but they can't do anything about it because it's live. When the broadcast ends, everyone is giving Gail mean looks as he has an embarrassed face, not being sure if he made the right decision. The room stays pin-drop silent for a while to increase suspense. Then finally, the silence breaks and the door opens. And the person who walked in is Roxanne Ritchie. "Go to my office. We need to talk," she says. Gail and Roxanne enter the office together. "I'm a huge fan of your work, Miss Ritchie. I wish I could say the same about you. Okay, look, I wanted this job because I love weather, and I want to use my weather analysis talent to help the world better prepare for it. Thousands of years ago, people would beg God for good weather and have no clue about what's going to happen and just cross their fingers, join their hands, and hope they don't starve to death over something they have no control over. Can you even imagine how terrible that would feel? Modern weather prediction science is a gift, and I refuse to misuse it for greedy capitalist profit." Roxanne sighs. "Look, Gail, I love how passionate you're about weather, and you're really sweet, but you think I'm really sweet? You're really sweet, but you need to wake up. This is the real world, not a fairy tale. We need to sometimes lie to people so they would continue to watch us. Otherwise, we won't have any money, and all the people who you love working with won't have a job anymore. They have children they need to feed. If we don't lie, we won't get views. If we don't get views, we won't get money. And if we don't get money, every hardworking man and woman you see over there will go home and tell their families they can't afford dinner tonight. That's how the real world works, whether you like it or not. So wake up, be a man, go on the broadcast again and tell them we made a mistake and it's 20%. Gail feels bad and regrets his decision. He feels he was just being childish, so he slowly nods his head. Roxanne smiles and says, "Thank you." Gail and Roxanne walk out of the office. "All right, people, let's go live again." Gail walks up to the stage as he now has the most important decision of his life to make. Listen to Roxanne and get the girl of his dreams, or stick to his morals and principles and do what he knows is right. Every step he walks up, his heart beats harder and harder. He feels as if it could burst out any second. When the two things one wants most in the world cannot coexist with one another, only then shall you see the true strength of one's character. Gail takes the final step and walks towards the stage desk in slow motion. He sits down on the chair using all the strength in his body to keep him still. We are live again in 3, 2, 1. Gail freezes and doesn't say anything for a few seconds as Roxanne Ritchie and the crew bite their nails. Then finally, Gail says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but we have made a miscalculation. The probability that it will rain tomorrow is..." Gail takes one last look at Roxanne Ritchie, who smiles at him. He feels amazed and absolutely adores the smile on her face. He thinks about everything. But there are rules that we all have to follow, and you're no exception, so be a team player. And you're really sweet. Every hardworking man and woman you see over there will go home and tell their families they can't afford dinner tonight. Modern weather prediction science is a gift, and I refuse to misuse it for greedy capitalist profit. The probability that it will rain tomorrow is still 5%. Everyone is shocked and disappointed. After the broadcast ends, all the crew members sigh in disappointment and they go home, leaving an empty studio with Gail and Roxanne as she slowly shakes her head. Gail wants to say something but just doesn't know what to say. Roxanne also, without saying anything to Gail, leaves the studio. Poor Gail, all alone in the studio, accompanied by nothing but his two friends, pain and regret. Everything turns gray like in typical movie fashion, and Gail, too, leaves the studio. Gail thought this was the worst thing that ever happened to him, but he would wish that was the worst thing to happen to him. Because what happened next was, it started raining. And you remember what his coworker said about what happens when people don't expect rain and it rains? Gail walks home in the rain drenched, not with water, but with regret. When he arrives home, he opens the door and falls face flat on his couch. But then he gets a call. When he picks up, the phone is Roxanne Ritchie saying, Well, guess what, genius? That 5% chance happened and it's raining. Our network is getting review bombed with 1-star reviews. You happy now? All because you just didn't want to round up just a little bit because of your stupid obsession with weather and your childish belief that we should never lie? Remember when I said that people are gonna lose their jobs? That's gonna happen. Starting with you. You're fired. Don't you dare come back tomorrow. Gail puts down the phone with an empty look on his face, frozen. He has now understood that we live in a society, which again, none of this is unrealistic in any way because as I've mentioned before, the exact same thing happens in real life, making this scene more impactful because it has become more than an animation on a digital screen. It is a reflection on real society that you live in and how it really works and the cruelty people need to do just to survive. Gail continues to lay on his couch as this realization slowly settles in, and that's the whole story of Gail. The end. No, my friends. This is not the end. This is the beginning. So the next day, Gail gets out of bed at like 1 p.m. with bags over his eyes, drags himself out of bed. He looks in the mirror at his messed up face from sleeping too long and punches it, shattering the mirror and giving him bloody hands, which he doesn't care about. Gail rips up his weather drawings one by one, erases all his math equations from his whiteboard, takes a permanent marker and writes in big letters, "Nobody cares." He looks at his Roxanne Ritchie poster, remembers when she smiled at him, and daydreams about the life he could have had with her. If he chose otherwise, he tears the poster apart. He walks out of his house to head to the bar, or let's say the coffee shop because it's a PG show, and on his way, a random stranger yells at him. "Hey, it's that idiot weatherman who said there was only a 5% chance it would rain yesterday! You ruined my picnic!" Gail, not having the energy to argue, just keeps walking. As many more people yell at him doing so, he mumbles under his breath, "I said 5%, not 0, you idiots. I hate people." While walking, he looks around and sees a bunch of homeless people on the street. One of them is rummaging through a trash can, another is eating a gross piece of food fallen on the ground. Then a long and fancy limousine pulls up. A fat man in a tuxedo walks out. All the homeless people gather around him, joining their hands and begging him for money. The fat man looks disgusted and keeps walking. He walks into a Rolex store, buys a shiny golden watch as the homeless people watch him, and he smirks and teases them with it. Gail walks up to his limousine driver. "Hey, did you see what he just did?" "See it all the time, my friend. And why do you work for this douchebag?" "Well, I got bills to pay." Gail keeps walking and arrives at the coffee shop. He walks in and orders 5 coffees. The barista says, "Whoa, tough day at work?" "I wish." "What happened?" "I got fired." "What did you do?" "I told the truth, but apparently that's bad for the weather station's ratings." "No way, dude. Weathermen always lie. Everyone already knows that. No way they can ever tell the truth. People get mad for really dumb reasons nowadays. You gotta cheat them sometimes to keep your business afloat. That's just how the world works." "I noticed." "You're not special. This stuff happens all the time." "Really? How?" "Like for example, even the coffee you're drinking right now comes from child labor." "That's right. 90% of coffee beans are farmed from poor third world countries. Workers make only $3 a day and often have to take their children out of schools to help them work. And they have terrible working conditions too. Bad chemicals, getting threatened and beaten if they don't work well too. That's horrible." "Yeah, but that's how you have coffee in front of you right now. See? It's just the world we live in." "I don't like this world." And once again, everything the barista said is 100% true in the real world we really do live in. I'm doing this because it's a good idea to include more mature morals in topics. The mistake that the actual Megamind 2 made is targeting it to kids, but the original movie was released 14 years ago, so all the Megamind fans are grown up now. That's why Megamind did so much worse in the box office and Rotten Tomatoes compared to Kung Fu Panda 4, which was also an overextended cash grab with nothing but childish humor, but the reason the Rotten Tomato reviews didn't absolutely suck is because Kung Fu Panda has a more kid-like audience due to Big Funny Panda do Cool Punch Punchy. Megamind didn't get that sort of blessing due to Smart Blue Man versus Incel not being the most attractive thing to kids, so more mature themes caters to the real target audience of Megamind that DreamWorks didn't think about. Gail gets up to leave the coffee shop. "Hey, don't you want to finish your coffee?" Gail says nothing and leaves. Bam! Gail gets punched in the face. He sees that the attacker was his coworker.
I got fired because of you.
The coworker then proceeds to beat up Gail, and Gail, being exhausted and weakened, fails to put up a good fight. He starts to bleed as everything slows down and he sees everyone walk past him, not trying to help an innocent man getting beat up. They all just ignore him and mind their own business, walking by as if nothing is going on. He looks at the bystanders, signaling to call the police, but nobody does. After a while, the enraged coworker finishes beating up Gail, and he has bruises all over his face. Gail is lying face flat on the ground, badly injured. He laughs like the Joker. Gail has had enough of this disgusting world and wants to end his own life. But of course, he's still a weather nerd, so that's what he wants to die too. So he climbs up a really tall mountain during a lightning storm, wanting to get struck by lightning. He takes a seat looking off into the distance, awaiting his death. He stares off into the distance, looking at the city. He sees all the lights, all the cars, all the factories pumping smoke into the atmosphere. Bam! Gail gets struck by lightning. But he's still alive. He looks at his arms, body, and legs, not even a single scratch. He gets confused and thinks he was just imagining it. So now he's done waiting and wants to do it the old-fashioned way and jump off the mountain. He stands on the edge, closes his eyes, and slowly leans forward. But it's very cold up in the mountain, so achoo! He sneezes, but instead of mucus coming out of his nose, it's icicles. He's shocked and he puts his hand forward to grab the icicles and zap! He shoots lightning out of his hands like Palpatine. He's in a moment of disbelief. The lightning bolt he got hit by gave him the power to harness weather. Don't ask me about the science behind that, it's just superhero logic. He wants to test the limit of his powers, so he blows a giant wind at the storm clouds and they all dissolve. He single-handedly stopped an entire storm within seconds. Gail wanted to see the limit of his powers and found out they were limitless. And he used his powers for good and made the world a better place. No, my friends. Don't you remember the last time a sad loser got limitless superpowers? Did he use his powers for good? No, he didn't, and neither would Gail. Or should I call him by his supervillain name, the Weatherman? Don't ask me where the costume magically appeared from, that's also just superhero logic. So the Weatherman uses wind to fly off that mountain up into the sky above the city. And strikes lightning at all the weather stations. Zap, 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 except for one, his former workplace. He comes crashing in through the roof and sees the new weatherman giving an apology on camera. Everyone is in shock. Watching him is his former coworker and Roxanne Ritchie. How did he do that? He pushes the new cameraman away and gets on camera live. With a dead, cold, psychopathic look on his face, he stares into the camera and says, "You didn't like it when I said there was gonna be a 5% chance of rain. Well, now there's gonna be 100% chance of a deadly storm and 100% chance of certain fucking death." He puts his hands up and the sky turns black. Gail, what? I'm not Gail anymore. I am the Weatherman. No, Gail, listen, I'm sorry, This isn't about you. Why does everyone think the world revolves around them? Then why are you doing that? The human species is a bunch of disgusting, greedy apes. They don't deserve life. What are you gonna do to the world? You'll see. The weatherman flies back into the sky and back to the mountain he was at earlier, puts his hands up in the air and keeps making his storm bigger and scary lightning flashes out, but the world isn't giving up that easily. American fighter jets fly towards the weatherman and prepare to launch missiles, but the weatherman uses the power of wind to crush all the jets into a ball. Then an army of tanks approaches him and he controls the lightning strikes in his storm to hit and destroy the tanks. A giant warship sails at him in a sea next to the mountain. The weatherman makes it rain really heavily on the warship, as well as creating a huge fog around it, making the people manning its guns unable to get a clear shot at him. Then he again blows an enormous blast of wind to tip the warship over and sink it. A new wave of tanks is set at him, but this time, we've used our smartest species on the planet's intelligence to adapt and improve. This time, the tanks have a rubber coat on their armor. Because rubber is immune to electricity, the lightning strikes were ineffective. The weatherman blows wind at them, but the tanks are too heavy to be blown. He tries to use fog again to obscure their vision to buy time to relocate, but the tank operators were given heat detection thermal goggles, still being able to see the weatherman. The tanks aim their guns and get ready to fire as it looks like it's the end for the weatherman, but then... Pause. Okay, So I'm gonna tell you two different alternate endings to this. One of them would be if this was just a separate movie from the Megamind franchise and I can just do whatever I see best. And the other ending is how I would tie it to the actual Megamind franchise, which was the purpose of this video that I kind of forgot. Alternate ending 1, its own separate movie. The weatherman looks at the tanks and understands that the possibility of him dying is no longer off the table. So he has no choice but to go for a Hail Mary attempt and pray that it works. He raises his hands up in the air, clears all the storm clouds in a circular area around the tanks, and uses the heat from the sun to burn them. Because remember, he can control all weather, even the sun, not just clouds and rain. As all the citizens look at the burning tanks, they see their final hope for survival burn with them. Now humanity only has one final option. We cut to an animated figure who looks like Joe Biden on the phone. On the other end are animated figures that look like Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Xi Jinping. They all look frightened and regretful and in sync, nod their heads, as the United States, Russia, China, and North Korea all launch their entire nuclear arsenal at the weatherman. Now, I know it's a bad idea to launch your entire nuclear arsenal at a target because that would end up destroying the world regardless of what happens, but it sounds dramatic and that's pretty much the only criteria for superhero movies, so I'll keep it as it is. They all launch their entire nuclear arsenal at the weatherman, but he once again controls the wind and creates a huge tornado around himself to grab all the thousands of nuclear bombs and throw them into outer space before they explode. Also showcasing what Gail said earlier on how powerful weather really is. Entire civilizations flourish or perish because of the weather. Now the world finally understands what he means, and everyone understands that he is not just some crazy guy over-obsessed with weather. Weather is really the grand thing he said it is. Because all of humanity's greatest inventions over thousands of years couldn't even put up a fight against the power of weather. So now humans are officially screwed. The weatherman closes his eyes and can feel everything around the world using wind. He can feel the texture and size, etc. of every object. He senses that he has successfully covered the entire world in storm clouds. He smiles, opens his eyes, and deeply exhales. He takes another breath in, opens his eyes wide as lightning flashes out of him. His body shakes and his veins show as he rains apocalyptic lightning on Earth, a lightning strike on every square foot of the planet. After a while, the lightning stops, and we get a glimpse of the world as it's shattered and civilization has been completely eradicated. Cut back to the weatherman. Now, if this was a movie, I would just show him standing there on top of the mountain and doing absolutely nothing for a full minute or two, because it will give the audience a sense of great uneasiness and suspense as they wait for an answer to what he thinks. What's gonna happen? Is the movie over? Then why are there no credits and the movie is still playing? After that 1 minute, the weatherman creates a windstorm and uses the wind to bring 50 newborn babies to him on top of his mountain. He intentionally left them alive. He then starts to care for and raise the babies by himself, as we see a montage of them slowly growing up. And while Gail raises them, he teaches them good morals and values on why you should be kind, not harm others for personal gain, help those in need, and much more. Slowly, society starts to redevelop and rebuild, with better citizens this time, and Gail has made sure to tell them to very carefully teach his teachings to the next generation too, and tell them to teach it to theirs, so on and so forth. We see clips of people in this new society. A builder falls down, and the builder next to him gives him his hand to help him up. A child is playing when he accidentally knocks over a pillar and it's gonna fall on him, but a stranger stops the pillar. Another child drops his ice cream, but the ice cream vendor gives him another one for free. We see a child with a birthday hat on running. He trips and sprains his leg and starts crying. His parents see that, and after a few hours, an entire town of hundreds of people are all outside the child's house singing him happy birthday together to cheer him up. And finally, someone turns on the TV, and there's a weatherman on the news who says the probability of it raining is 5%. We see another glimpse of society as it is now a utopia with cool buildings and stuff, and now it's fully rebuilt. No wars, no famines, and no greedy corporations. We now see Gail as a 100-year-old man lying on his deathbed, which is now the average life expectancy due to this new society's better behavior. He is accompanied by his 50 children he raised who all love him very much. He calls one of them, and with his last breath he whispers to him the whole story of what happened in the previous society and how he had to end it all. His adopted son is shocked, but understands it had to be done in order to fix the world. Gail allows his son to tell his secret to the whole world about how society used to be like to ensure humanity never goes back to its old ways. Gail slowly closes his eyes as he takes one last look at his better world. His eyes are now fully closed and Gail is now dead. As the movie ends, there's text displayed on the screen. It's the famous quote, "If you want to make the world a better place, start with children." This quote is very true and is the moral of the story. The reason why Gail was able to make the world a utopia is because he raised children well. A lot of people today in the world have a bunch of ideas on how to fix society, but none of them will work because everyone's already made up their minds about everything. What will fix society is not blocking the streets to protest our government, it's not rioting and looting, it's not marching with signs, it's not storming the Capitol, it's not setting stuff on fire, it's not starving in a hunger strike, it's raising better children. The government is made up of 70-year-old men who will never change their minds about anything. So you can't change the present-day government, but you can change the future government. Because kids are the future, and how you raise them determines the future. You can't change Joe Biden's or Donald Trump's mind, but you can change our sons and our daughters' minds, because they're gonna be the next politicians. This is the poetic lesson I want to teach to the world with this movie. And I feel all movies should be something like this, and not soulless garbage made only for the purpose of making money, like the actual Megamind 2 was. So that is my purpose, that is why I exist, and that is why I made this YouTube channel, to bring back real storytelling to movies that have been severely ruined by the greedy movie industry. But I can't. I can't do anything because I don't have the millions of dollars they have and waste. I can't even afford to make these videos for much longer. I'm spending hundreds of dollars on each video and making only $10 back if I'm lucky. That's why I need your support. So please contribute to my Patreon, and not only will you get access to secret videos I'll never upload publicly on my YouTube channel, like the fixed backstories of the 3 other villains in the Doom Syndicate, which are just as good if not better than this one, along with a third alternate ending to Gail's story, but you'll also get your name in my next video so you can tell everyone you helped change movie history. So if you don't want this to be my final rewrite, click the link in the description or pinned comment and give me a fighting chance against these lazy, greedy writers who have all the money they want. Oh yeah, just remember this was supposed to be a Megamind rewrite. Not gonna lie, I totally forgot about that while writing this script. Alternate ending too. So rewind back to when Gail sent the nuclear bombs into space. He closes his eyes and is about to end the world, but this time, a mysterious figure taps him from behind. Gail turns around and it's Megamind. Megamind tells him to stop as he has a better plan. Megamind then explains to the weatherman how he faced the same problem as him when he basically just spawned in a prison and never fit in with the other kids, even though all he wanted was to help them. Megamind also hates society. So Megamind has come up with a plan to fix the world just like the weatherman. It's the Phase 2 that was mentioned in the movie, which if you don't know, Phase 2 is basically Megamind's plan that he will put rockets underneath the city and blast it off to outer space and land on the moon so that he can be the ruler of that city and rebuild society from there. Megamind explains the plan to the weatherman and Gail says, "Wow, that's a much better idea because then I won't have to kill anyone." Imagine if I actually ended the world, lol. That would have been quite foolish. But how can we just send a city into outer space without it breaking apart or everyone running out of oxygen? Don't worry about that, it's just superhero logic. This would surely get fans hyped for Megamind 2 now that they can actually relate to the villain. And that's how the Doom Syndicate was formed. It's made up of villains who hate everything about society and all have the same goal of sending a city to the moon and restarting it. And again, if you want to see the backstories of other members of the Doom Syndicate and why they joined, click the icon in front of you. And if you want to see the full Megamind movie rewrite, click here. And if you want to see me rewrite Kung Fu Panda 4, click here.